So over the next 10 minutes, hopefully, I'm going to share with you a few hints and tips and ways to look after your mental health. I know that at the moment, it's increasingly difficult to do the things that we normally would that would help to keep us well and safe. But I do know also that God is with us in the midst of all of our circumstances, and we can be assured of his faithfulness and steadfastness in the midst of this. So I've talked about it before at previous festivals, but I don't ever get tired of talking about this because I think it's really useful ways of looking after our mental health. But I'm tailoring it to a kind of lockdown world. I'm going to try not to use that word again throughout this video, but I can't make any promises. So the first way that we can look after our well-being at any time is to connect with people. Now, we know at the minute that's more difficult in a physical way, where we would normally socialise, be in a room with people, but it's really important that we find ways to connect with those that bring us joy, make us feel good, can make us laugh, but can also listen to the more difficult things of our life, the things that are upsetting us or worrying us, able to share in that. So whether that's via a Facebook group chat or a Snapchat group or I don't even know, a Zoom call, all sorts of different ways that we can connect with people and making sure that we're connecting in the best way that we can under the circumstances. The next way when we think about how we look after ourselves is being active, and it's one of the things that we're still allowed to do. There's not much we can do, but being active is one of them. And that means doing something that resembles some form of exercise. Some people absolutely love it. I personally really dislike it. But I do know that when I've been for a walk or a run or a jog or whatever, I feel slightly better afterwards. My mood has lifted. I might ache a bit the following day, but in that moment my mood has lifted. And so I would encourage you to find ways to be active at the moment. Go for a walk, have a look around parks nearby. Whatever you can do to keep yourself physically active at the moment will help to also look after your mental health. The next one is about giving. Now, in church we talk a lot about giving. Often it's a culture of offering what we put in the box or the bag or the plate every Sunday. But in real terms, our faith calls us, Jesus calls us to our whole lives being an offering, to give everything of ourselves over when we follow Jesus. And so really, when we think about giving, we could think about how we might be able to give to our neighbours, to our friends, to our wider community at this moment in time. If parents are going shopping or you're having to do the shopping for your household, maybe pick up a couple of items if you're able to donate to a food bank. Maybe it's a message to somebody you haven't heard from in a while. Maybe it's a little random gift that you could send in the post, or a card or a letter to somebody. But giving to other people, being generous with your time, with your energy, with your efforts, not only does that help other people, but it makes you feel good at the same time. So finding ways to give in the midst of this is really important too. The fourth is keep learning. In church we sometimes call that discipleship, journeying closer with God at all times, seeking to learn more and know more about him and his relationship with us and the world, and also what that means for us as Christians. But keeping learning or discipleship can take all sorts of formats. And actually at the moment, we've got more time on our hands than we ever would have done. So it's maybe a chance to explore a bit of the Bible that we've never looked at before, to explore some of the history or the background to some of the stories and examples we read in Scripture. Perhaps it's learning the Greek or the Hebrew that it was written in originally. Or perhaps it's learning more about how the church around the world is dealing with this current crisis. I know that All We Can are heavily involved in Festival at Home, and it's good to see what they're doing across the world to support communities that are so much more vulnerable than ours at this time. Or maybe you just want to learn a new hobby or try a new skill, perfect something that you started to learn but you've had to put it to one side to prepare for exams or uni work or whatever. Maybe now's the time to re-pick up those old things that we've not had the chance to do, to learn more about all sorts of skills. And maybe this time is about learning a little bit more about yourself, being able to reflect inwardly, reflect on your relationship with other people, reflect on your relationship with God, what's working, what's not working, what brings you joy, what helps you in the difficult moments. Learning more about what works and what doesn't work can be really, really useful in helping us to develop our faith further. The final one is about taking notice. And I think it's one that Jesus talked about in the New Testament, in the Gospels. It's one where he said about, look at the birds in the sky and look in the lilies in the field and see how much more precious you are in the eyes of God. And I think when we think about that, we need to consider that actually we can look around, we can take notice of our surroundings. Perhaps at the moment that's all that we can do. Normally our lives are so full of places to be, things to do, tasks to complete, but right now we're not in that same position. And so finding things that we can do to help us take notice, to be in the present moment, is really useful. I find that works particularly well when I'm out on a walk. I'm out every day trying to get a bit of exercise, get a bit of fresh air, so I'm not looking at the same four walls. And while I'm doing that, I'm really taking notice of my surroundings. I'm listening out to see what birds I can hear in the trees. I'm noticing how many cracks there are in the pavements, the different paving stones that you might see on the different paths that you walk on. They're all little things. Do they bring me great joy? Do they make my life more fulfilled? No, they don't. But do they allow me for a moment to go away from what's going on and to take my head away from everything that's worrying me? Absolutely. And so I'd really encourage you to find ways to take notice where you can. The other thing to say, these are more general points outside of connecting, being active, giving, keeping learning and taking notice. It's important to acknowledge that some days right now are going to be easier than others. And normally the things we would do to cope with those things we might not be able to do. I've struggled with depression and anxiety for the last 18 months or so, and I know that there are some days that my thoughts, my feelings, the stuff that's going on for me can be so overwhelming. And to begin with in lockdown, I've said it again, that's the second time I apologise. During this whole time, there were some days where I was really beating myself up. I wasn't feeling great, I didn't have very much motivation, I didn't really want to get out of bed, I didn't really know what to do or didn't know where to start. And for the first couple of weeks, I really beat myself up about that. I was thinking, never am I going to have time like this again. There's so many opportunities to do things that I wouldn't normally get done. I've got a list a mile long of tasks I want to complete. But I've learned now, kind of weeks 3 to 6 were a bit of a learning time, where I recognise that some days are going to be rubbish. Some days are going to be tough. Some days are just going to be a little bit too much of a challenge. And on those days, I try and acknowledge that as soon as possible in the day. So if I wake up and I'm feeling rubbish and I think today's just going to be a rubbish day, that's okay. I'm going to have a rubbish day. It's not going to be great. If all I do is binge Netflix or chat to friends online, that's okay. As long as I know that tomorrow will be a different day. That I won't wake up feeling the same way tomorrow. There's a new opportunity, a fresh chance for things to be different. And so I'd really encourage you to acknowledge your sad days. Don't pretend they're not happening. Don't let yourself have them. But recognise that there will be better days too. And keeping them in balance at all times is really important. I've mentioned it a few times already, but I think it's important to recover this, particularly because it's something I was doing a lot of, was to-do lists. I thought, right, I've got time at home, I've got space, I don't have to do the things I normally would, so what can I do in this time frame? But very quickly, I found that was more like a rod I was beating myself with than a carrot of encouragement. And so what I encourage people to do now, when you're thinking about all the things you want to get done, maybe put them on a list, but don't let that list be your focus. Have a done list, a completed, a success list. And things that as you're doing them, you think, oh, I wouldn't have put that on a to-do list, but you've done them. Make a note of them on your done list. Because at the end of the day or at the end of the week or the end of a fortnight, when you look back at everything that you've done, and you maybe have that moment of thinking, I've not done that much at all, actually, you've done a huge amount. You've done things that you had forgotten you'd even been involved with, things that didn't seem important at the time but now have made a massive difference. So have a done list rather than a to-do list. I think the final bit of encouragement I've got for you is to just say that we all struggle at times. At the moment, things are even more difficult. But my experience of faith, my journey with God, has told me that God is with me and is with us at all times. God is in the midst of everything that's going on in our lives. The chaos, the quiet, the moments we least expect. And if we take moments in every day to try and see where God is and to ask ourselves the question, God, where are you in the midst of this? We will be encouraged. We will be reminded that God is with us always, in all circumstances, at all times, in all ways. God does not leave us nor forsake us. And so as we go to the end of this session, let us hold on to that kind of truth, that statement of faith that God is with us always.